Norton Law Group. And now, your objection sustained. Your hosts, Karen Klaus and former Bexar County District Attorney Nico Jorge.
1200 WOAI, this is Sidebar with former Bexar County DA Nico Jorge, trial lawyer, managing partner of LaHood Norton Law Group, and George Araujo, scholar, former chemist and pharmaceutical researcher and director, and Salo. I don't know your title. What is it?
I don't know. Amado's dad.
The man of many talents. Well, oh boy, I wish our President Biden would have had a few more talents so that we could have actually watched a debate on Wednesday. But
everybody's on debate hangover.
Yeah,
That was an amazing, open casket debate. It was amazing.
Everybody had their opinion of what was going to happen. It was going to be a slaughter. Biden's going to be given his medicine, and he's going to be coming out screaming at everybody. Trump is going to not perform as well. But wow, it was an eye opener, wasn't it?
Yeah, we did the live.
Yes,
live
I watched it.
So we did a joint R-rated Christianity Sidebar live commentary. So we were watching. It was something new, and Salo was over with us at the house studio, and we observed it and watched it. I'm glad I did. I wouldn't have watched it live if we didn't do the show, and then I would have been playing catch up or watching other people's opinion about it. Look, I mean, I said this that night. I said this Thursday night after the show. Trump did not have a great debate, in my opinion. I mean, he did not have a great debate. He had a good debate. I expected him to have a bad debate, like the first debate with Biden.
That was bad.
That was bad. I mean, he threw that one away. And Biden being so, I guess, feeble now and all the problems, I thought it was going to be over-domineering. The idea was he needed to come in very disciplined. He did come in disciplined. I thought he was much more disciplined on the first half of the debate than the end. You could see that from a body language standpoint, he does not answer the January 6th well, in my opinion. He does not answer the conviction, the case from Bragg's well. And there's a lot of ways to refocus people's attention on that, from the Robert Hur report to other things that you can do and really turn Biden and the questioners on their heels. He doesn't do that well. He dropped his head at times. But then Biden had a horrible debate. So that's so net. I mean, Trump won. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, Biden literally was as bad as people were thinking. I mean, he fulfilled the caricature that he's been portrayed to be. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I'm really being objective when I make this analysis. So you have the difference. So you have Trump, who did not have a great debate, but a good debate. You had Biden, who had a horrible debate, but net, I think Biden, and I believe now, and I said it that night, and I think George can talk to us about polls and stats and all the other stuff. I think Biden pushed more people away from him than Trump brought people to him. Yeah, that makes sense?
Yes,
now,
absolutely.
net, they're going to go to Trump. I'm just saying, but people aren't going to Trump because, these undecideds, like, oh, wow, Trump really won me over versus, man, Biden pushed me away. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's my assessment
Totally
overall,
understand.
just from a Cliff Note perspective.
Yeah, well said. I mean, take your pick. Lots of coughing, lots of dazed and confused looks. They had that split panel look, and Nico would often look at me and say, that's not a good look for Biden. Because as Trump was talking, Biden would just sort of look. Yeah. He'd look down towards the corner, and his mouth was open. That didn't look good. And so between that, he couldn't finish sentences. He had muttered words. And
how many times did they even say, coughing. You have more time? Like, do you want to fill the time that you have allotted?
That actually raises the only criticism, and I do think, to Nico's earlier point, that Tapper and Bash, I think overall, they weren't terrible. They were
not
actually
at all. They did good.
They were actually pretty good. But I think on that note, they certainly favored Biden, it seems to me. Specifically, they would allow Biden to finish things. And they would often interrupt him because he was going nowhere. He was putting words together that didn't make any sense. And they would often interrupt him to keep a bad thing from becoming worse. But then they would have these follow-up questions for Trump, which would then prevent him from going back and answering some of the things that Biden said. And I think in that sense, they showed a bias. But I don't think that's horrible.
I mean, it was negligible to me. I mean, it wasn't so obvious because unless you're looking at their time, because we're listening to the answers, I was really distracted by Biden's presentation from the optics. Biden looked horrible. No one did Biden any favors by keeping the camera on him when Trump was responding. Trump was making his kind of quirky little Trump expressions towards the first half. He was disciplined. He was stoic. He listened. He looked forward, and that's how he should have stayed. But then it's difficult. You have to really be disciplined. Trump went into the mouth stuff and the head nodding and all the stuff that you get the memes on him for. But Biden just looked lost. His eyes were wide open. Davi came in to bring water to Jeff and Saulo, and she goes, "What's wrong with his face?" I mean, he was answering a question. His eyes were just bulging, and then he'd go to kind of staring with his mouth just drooping. It was very disconcerting, and they didn't do him any favors. So now with Tapper and Bash, look, I'm critical of them. I thought net they did a really good job overall. They asked relevant questions. They asked both of them
I was
questions.
surprised.
Unless as I've heard that criticism, George, of they saved Biden. I don't know that yet. For me, the jury's still deliberating on that.
I don't think anything could save Biden. In fact, I was reading from the Spectator that I was reading in the Spectator, and I thought that they said it probably the best. They said this wasn't a debate; this was a medical emergency. Is the way they coined it, and it really was. Because I mean, anybody that came into this debate wondering if the president's mental and physical stature is quickly decreasing, all doubt was removed after this debate, and all efforts from the White House and their social media minions to sort of gaslight people into thinking that this is all cheap fakes. No, there goes your cheap fake argument.
The cheap fake went away.
Just listen to the debate and you'll see that. This was a very, very sad moment for the president. I felt badly for Biden. I don't like Biden at all. I think his character is horrific. I think he needs a character bypass, if you ask me. And I think his policies are a disaster for the country. But I genuinely felt bad for the man. Talk about where are the ageists at? Where are the elder abuse people at? This was unacceptable. It really was that man should even be there, and much less the leader of the free world. How the hell did we get here?
The question begs to ask, Saulo brought this up too, but and we've discussed this off air. Why would you let him do the debate? I mean, if you know behind the scenes that this is a possibility or more likely a probability, why would you send him out to the slaughter?
These are the questions
I think. It's a legitimate question. And people are, I'm not anything. I'm just, someone asked the question. It wasn't me. And I thought, that's a legitimate question. Why would you set him up? Now, do you think he was that far behind in the polls? Apparently, according to George, he's not that far behind. But I mean, to where do you have to throw a Hail Mary? Why was this debate so much earlier? These are legitimate questions. Of course, the theory, people out there, people that have their theories is because they wanted him to fumble like this. So when it comes to the convention, they have an excuse now and they have time to get someone else. I mean, look, I don't know.
Listen to your question. You're presupposing that this isn't a man that's acting of his own volition. You keep saying, why did they let him do that? That presupposes that somebody else is in charge. That in itself is scary.
Did you see Joe Biden walk him off?
Oh, no, I know.
Walk off the stage.
And that's a legitimate question. But just the question is scary enough.
Oh,
that the idea that other people are making these decisions for the country. I'm sorry, we didn't hire bureaucrats. We didn't hire Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, fake Dr. Jill. We didn't hire her. And yet, the great irony to your point is that at the very end of the debate, she's escorting him off the stage. I mean, Trump's just doing these things. He's walking off of his own volition. But she, with the help of an aide, and then the kindergarten moment afterwards.
That's the one that bothers me more than that one.
Right. Oh, Joe, you did so well. And the idea that you put this on national television, you did so great.
You answered all the questions.
Answered all the questions.
Addressed all the issues.
Wow. And you used facts. And Trump, he just lied. Okay, thanks, Mommy. And he's just sitting there half catatonic.
Yeah.
With that stapled face that he always has. That's a travesty, man.
It was bad.
And we really got to step back and say, how the hell did we get here? So, Trump at one point said, I really have no idea what he just said at the end of that sentence. And I don't really think he knows either. I think that's probably the sentence that encapsulates how the average American felt about the debate.
Now let's talk about that statement. I'm glad you brought it up. The way he said that was a strong statement. It was a hard-hitting statement. But did you notice the delivery? The delivery was everything. He didn't do it in his normal Trump way. He didn't do it in a kind of a whiny, whatever, everybody's screwing me over type way. He just, because
it was a fact.
I really don't know what he said, and I really don't think he knows what he said. Mm-hmm. The problem remains, that's the demeanor. Now, you might say, Nico, that's not Trump. Got it, check. I'll take that criticism. I'm just telling you, the thing that repudiates people from him is the way he delivers stuff or whatever. The things that drive people crazy. They don't drive me crazy anymore, but they drive other people crazy. That's fine. Fair enough. But to my humble opinion, if I was working with Trump, and the thing that frustrated me as someone who's going to vote for Trump, by the way, and you know that. I mean, that's not even an issue for me. But I wish he would have prepared for the debate more. It's obvious to me he didn't prepare for the debate. It just didn't. I mean, he would have gone in there with canned in his mind, but he could Trumpanize the responses to certain attacks. You knew certain attacks were coming, and you come back with data. Robert Hur report on the conviction. I was like, Joe, according to Robert Hur, you're the one. He said you should have been charged with this, and this. And the only reason why, unfortunately, is because that you have memory issues, Joe, which is alarming to the American people. And I think we're seeing it tonight on stage. And then you could really turn that around and put him more on his heels. And that 2-minute closing, man, that 2-minute closing is coming up.
Yeah,
It didn't leave you anything. It was like, I could have done without it. Biden's forget about it. I don't know what the hell he was saying. But Trump's, I could have done without it. I didn't.
Some say that he should have just talked to the American people instead of putting a bunch of facts together.
Let me ask you, if this, this is your target, if you hit the target, you did good, right? Right? So what if Trump's target was not to show off Trump, but to show off how bad Biden was, and he's like, you know what? I'm not going to give good arguments. I'm not going to give good ideas or good phrases, because right now the purpose of tonight's debate is let people see Biden. So I thought, he kept talking.
That was part of it.
And I'm like, because if he would have said amazing zingers, people would have been talking about the zingers instead of Biden. So I'm like, maybe he was holding on the zingers.
I think that was part of it. I don't know. But still, you still need to replace some facts. You have to look. If a lie goes unchecked, it becomes the truth. So you got to check lies. I'm not saying you have to debate them, unpack them completely. You didn't have time in that type of format, which I've criticized before.
The plan, the strategy was not to debate ideas, was to show how stupid Biden was.
Well, I think he followed that first half.
There was a lot of good content that actually came out in there. A lot of opportunities. What you guys keep pointing to my microphone? Am I not as coordinated this week?
Correct.
Correct.
So it looks like I can't tell if I'm hearing music or not.
You are.
I'm hearing music. All right, never mind. But
okay, your microphone's fixed, and it's going to be good for when we come back after the break.
If you hear voices and see people that have passed away, then you're in trouble.
All right. Am I doing better than Biden?
Some say that the debate wasn't the only bad thing that happened for the Democrats. Maybe a Supreme Court ruling. We're going to talk about that also this hour on Sidebar. We'll be right back. It's time for you to talk, Salo. Tell everybody where to go and not there.
S180.tv. Thank you for following us on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. We will try to get another Instagram account. And, speaking of, 3 people sent me some stuff, and they were telling me, hey, Salo, what's wrong with your account? And I'm like, why? Right after I posted because I got somebody left some Trump stuff on my door, and I put it on Instagram. And they tell me, look. And it says that Instagram was shadow banning me. And I'm like, I mean, I'm nobody. I have no followers. And I'm like, if they are shadow banning me, imagine somebody that does have influence or have a lot of followers or whatever. That's going to be very interesting in this coming election.
We'll get to some more of that with the recent Supreme Court ruling on that very issue. But I wanted to point out that just to slightly qualify what Nico said from my view, and we're probably saying the same thing differently. It's not that Trump didn't prepare for the debate. It's that Trump didn't prepare, in my view, as effectively
that's what I meant.
for the debate.
Yeah,
I didn't know that's what you meant. I just wanted to
talked about the
that.
debate, I'm sure.
Indeed. But I just want to point this out, and you pointed this out at the debate analysis we did on Thursday. We are avid, unabashed, unapologetic, at least I am, and I can speak for Nico, Trump supporters. Believe very much that his policies are absolutely essential for the country. They worked for the 4 years that was in there. 3 out of those 4 years, setting aside the last year because of COVID, were absolutely perfect and the best the country has seen in decades. And that's objectively inarguable. You can argue on the basis of feelings. I got it. But objectively, by any objective measure, they were the best 3 years we've seen in decades from any president in the United States. Now, unabashed supporters, but we are not Trump ass kissers. That we are not. And so we got to point out opportunities that we think were left on the table. And that's one of them. Nico had mentioned that there were just a series of sort of succinct facts on issue after issue after issue. I pointed out just a few. Trump's strong point is the economy. His strong point is also illegal immigration. His strong point is also law enforcement. It just turns out that that's perfect for him. That is a perfect storm for Trump because they're all related, right? Illegal immigration and economics and law enforcement, Nico, are interrelated topics. And on all of those issues, Trump policies really helped the country. He should have had some quick go-to facts that are inarguable. Congressional Budget Office facts. The Joint Federation on Taxation facts. He could have had some quick go-to references to inform people, but to also debunk the lie after lie after lie from an increasingly a coherent Biden. And he didn't. And I just think that would have taken him over. That would have gone from a decent debate to an excellent debate. And I think we need that at this point.
But it wasn't the most perfect debate ever. His statement from his camp was that now that was back to the old and that's whatever. It wasn't a perfect debate. It wasn't the greatest debate in the history of, and even close on debate standards, in my opinion. But that's what I was mentioning on Thursday, George. Yes, I just think that you could have, in proper preparation. I'm not saying he didn't prepare at all, but Trump's strength is him talking extemporaneously. I mean, he just talks off the cuff. I mean, he's a good banterer. Debating is different. I'm not kidding you. On break, when that first break came, I was like, damn, Trump is really being disciplined. I mean, he wasn't sucked into stuff. His demeanor, he was very stoic. You could tell he was working on keeping himself down and not using as many, when he does his hand motions, the higher his hands go and the further away from his body, the more his body, his voice raises. And he was very tempered because, to Saulo's point, if that was the strategy, it would have been a great strategy. And it is a good strategy. Just see, and you feel it out. Or we're going to get the State of the Union address Biden, who's yelling at everybody and comes across strong. Mm-hmm. You saw little moments of that when he's talking about my son's not a sucker, but then it was misapplied. And then Trump, I thought, calmly refuted that, and then he kept over and over again. But there's different techniques that you can do from an advocacy standpoint where you even bring Tapper and Bash in. I go, you guys can Google this right now. People watching right now, Google this at home and look up that you have these kind of real practical, he's asking me to Google. Oh, he's right. Because if you fact check Biden, inflation wasn't where he said. Unemployment wasn't where he said. Border Patrol actually tweeted or did whatever they did. They fact checked him. We have never, ever endorsed him, nor will we ever endorse him. The border numbers were wrong. Losing troops during his watch, that was absolutely wrong. Remember Afghanistan debacle. So there was a lot of things that you could have just been ready for.
Those are great examples, really great examples. And they, again, all interrelated and all in Trump's favor. He could have really capitalized. He threw out a couple of zingers. I'll give you an example because I thought this was a real wonderful opportunity. I thought this is great. He's going in the right direction. And then he went off into something else. Like, for instance, here's a statement from Biden. He's talking about his economic record. Well, his lack of economic record. But and then he ends it by saying that he beat Medicare. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So here's the total statement. Quote, making sure we make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we had to deal with. Look, we finally beat Medicare. That's the statement.
It was bad.
To which Trump said, well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death. And so Trump should have capitalized and said the connection between Medicare and illegal immigration is that illegal aliens are getting the benefits of Medicare and Social Security. Yeah. And that just last week, this is fresh, just last week, the Biden administration issued a plan that gives illegal aliens access to Social Security benefits, work permits, and those healthcare services tap into Medicare services. Now, it's illegal to do that. You're not supposed to do that. But the Biden administration, shocker, is doing a workaround. Now, this is recent, and Trump can point that out. Now, everybody knows that Social Security is going bankrupt. And there are senior citizens across the country that are scared to death of that. This is a legit concern. right? We have trillions of dollars in unfunded liabilities from Social Security. Trump knows all this stuff. And he could have pointed that out right there, tie it into illegal immigration and into economics. It could have been much more than a twofer.
It's no different than when you're in a fight. You train for a fight. You train for a scenario. You train for your opponent's best punch. And then in application, it's different. That's why you have to train under stress. That's what debate prep is. And that's why early on, like Gavin Newsom, I thought would stylistically would have given Trump a lot of problems.
Yeah.
I mean, because Trump was calm, it was good. Because Biden wasn't an opponent that night. You have to really think about that. Biden, what opponent? How hard was it to debate Biden? Now Biden said a bunch of malarkey. The irony to me is that he called Trump way more names than Trump ever mentioned about him. He just said you have stupid policies, you're this, Joe, whatever. What I thought was very frustrating, and this is where the discipline lacked. This is the stamina of debating. I'm not saying Trump doesn't have stamina. He obviously has stamina. I don't know where he gets some of it from because he doesn't seem very healthy. But the stamina of debating is they regressed into just name calling. You're the worst, and I'm the best. You're the worst, and I don't want to hear that crap. Give me the evidence of why he's the worst or why you're the best or whatever it is. I need evidence because I'm making a decision on who's going to run this country. I need evidence. I don't care about what you think of yourself or your opponent. Prove it to me. And then secondly, and it irritated the absolute crap out of me, is the whole discussion on golfing. I don't give a crap about golf. I mean, and the vast majority of Americans can't afford to play golf, nor do they care about golf. No disrespect to golf players out there. I'm not a golf player. I don't want to be a golf player. It doesn't interest me in the slightest. Maybe would later in life, I have no idea, but I doubt it. There's zero interest in it. But my point is, I'm thinking of the audience. Again, it's always about the audience because I want to win. They're thinking like, okay, so you guys both can afford golf. You have time to play golf. I guess you're not that busy. And I don't care who can swing. I mean, you guys are like pulling out your nuts in the locker room. I don't want to hear that. And it was just stupid to me. But that's the lack of discipline. Let Biden talk about that crap. You bring people back on. And so that's where I think Trump just couldn't help it. He's been going through a lot, and he lost his guard. He put his guard down.
Both of you are talking about Trump obviously won this debate or whatever it was. Yet I am looking at comments on Facebook, and it's a little bit surprising to me, but I want for both of you to comment on it. Several people going back and forth. This is an embarrassment. These are the two worst guys. I hate Trump and Biden. And that means that this situation still exists.
Yeah.
But there are only two choices right now. So how do we deal with this? I mean, of course, some people are mentioning, hey, it's not the person, it's the policies.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. Many times the decision is not between great and bad. It's bad and better. Now, I'm not saying Trump is bad and the other one's better or whatever, or vice versa. But if to the person saying that, these are the horses that have been brought to the stable. We have to get on one of them. The country has to decide which horse will lead us out into the pasture, so to speak, if I'm using analogies still. So this is what's been brought to us. Which one do you want to get on? And we know how this one races because we had that one for 4 years.
Right.
And we know how this one races because this one's been racing for 4 years or trotting or whatever you want to use your analogy. And so now which one do you want to get on? That's it. I mean, we can, with all due respect to the people saying that, whether we can agree or disagree on that, this is what we have to deal with. So it's like, man, this sucks. I can't believe this building's falling down and the roof's going to fall and the walls are going to come in. Okay, well, either you fix it or you get out of the house. I mean, we have to make decisions, and these are our only choices for now. I don't know what's going to happen at the convention. George has talked about that, I think, that night, Thursday night as well. It's not as easy as people think it is. It doesn't seem like Biden's going away nicely. But the fact that they're openly talking about it,
right?
How does that help their cause on that 10%? See, my focus on Thursday, and George knows this, I don't need to hear. I don't need to be in an echo chamber of like what I like and what this is. I'm not into that. I mean, I'm focused on that 10%. What would move the needle for that 10%? And I think Biden apparently moved, and what I thought was that Thursday night is that Biden pushed the needle towards Trump. I don't know if Trump pulled the needle towards him, but Biden definitely pushed the needle towards Trump. Now, and anyone that stays home is doing Trump a favor. Now, we talked about this after the show, Saulo. If Biden gets switched out, that excitement of, thank God it's not anyone but Biden, even on that side, that could energize them. That could, someone that was going to stay home that doesn't stay home, that's a problem. So if he's switched out with whomever, it could be a problem for Trump.
It can't be a switch up. Go ahead.
I think that's true. And you mentioned Newsom. I mean, Newsom is one giant suit filled with empty air. I mean, really, it's just a vacuous. The guy's a vacuous dude. But I mean, he comes across polished.
Yep.
And he comes across a lot like Obama. He says
better.
a lot. He
He's
doesn't
better than
actually
Obama.
say anything, but he actually talks a lot.
Yeah.
Like poop with
and
sprinkles.
he articulates in such a way, and he's got the perfect hair. And so you combine those things together, and we have an incredibly impressionable American public. We do. Social media hasn't exactly helped. And those things replace for content and substance. That's why I think in a debate with Newsom, that's where Trump would definitely have to have facts ready to go.
Yep.
See, in that particular setting, it would be decimating to Trump.
Yep.
So while it wasn't decimating to Trump here, and he was able to get away with it,
Correct.
Because Biden was his own worst enemy. In a debate with Newsom, not having those facts would have decimated Trump.
George,
It would have been a flipped analysis here this morning.
You explained exactly what I was alluding to earlier. That's exactly right. I watched some of the discussion between Newsom and Hannity, and Hannity prides himself in facts, and he neutralized Hannity. Not that Hannity's some great interviewer, and
Right.
so I'm not. It's not like Hannity's my standard. I'm not a huge fan, but whatever. But what I'm saying is, he had charmed them, and they like each other, so it's probably easier. They don't have to hate each other to disagree, and I like that about both. That's fine. But he gave a lot of facts. They weren't accurate. I mean, I didn't watch the one with Ron DeSantis, but I saw clips of it. Ron did much better. Ron's prepared for that bantering. Ron has facts. So if it's not Biden, Trump has to raise his stakes if he's going to debate anybody else, which, look, he might. Biden said he's ready for September. I don't know. I don't know what the purpose of that would be after seeing this debacle. It just really baffles me, to be honest with you.
Nico, I never understood that. These guys have considerable resources, and they have fact-checking teams, if you will. They have research teams at their disposal. I mean, all you have to do is to research what the opponent is saying out there on social media. Now, what are their go-to so-called facts and talking points? And then proactively dismantle them with actual data and be ready to go. You know they're going to bring them up again.
But George, the bigger question is, do people even care about the facts anymore? Or do they just care about what people look like?
Legit question.
We're going to
Legit
continue
question.
this
I think that's where
conversation.
Salo is coming from, right?
Yeah.
No one cares?
We are going
That's
to
nice.
continue this conversation coming up right after this break. More with Sidebar.
This is News Radio 1200 WOAI, San Antonio, an iHeart radio station.
The U.S. military is once again dismantling a pier built to deliver humanitarian aid into Gaza. On Friday, the Pentagon said they're removing the pier due to poor weather conditions with no...
WOAI. Please join us online. We're going to be live during the program, of course, but we continue live on any social media platform that you can choose.
X? Are you on X?
I am.
You are?
I am.
Do
Yes,
you get
I love
lost in
X. What?
I was telling George the other day, because he observes TikTok and sometimes Instagram, whatever, but I don't want George to get on TikTok.
No.
Because he loves information, he loves stats, TikTok is that. TikTok is a little bit of everything. And
Yeah.
It's a drug.
I have to say, I'm on all of them, and I love X. I love it
X.
because it has the view that sometimes I appreciate more.
And the way that people argue on it, I think it got better. Before it was just trash talking, but now depending who you follow, like news commentators, they're starting to talk to
So
each
in
other.
other words, it's a little bit more intelligent sometimes.
Yeah, it got like that. So anyway.
There's no dance contest. I don't know.
No, that's in cats.
Okay, so I don't know where we left off, but I do have to ask, how does it even happen if they pull Biden out of the race? How does that even happen? He already has the delegates, they have voted for him in different states. So what is the process? Is it even something that can happen?
No, you go ahead. No one.
No, I think this is a lot more complicated than people think. And it's easy. First of all, I don't think it's a great idea for Biden to leave. I think he's a treat for Trump. He's a gift.
Yes.
Well, it's a great idea, not a great idea for Trump.
Politically,
but for the
Biden is a
Democrats.
gift for Trump. He's not exactly a gift for the country, but he's a gift for Trump politically. And to your points that you just described here, had it been anyone else, I think Trump could have been in trouble because of his approach. Salo, I realize this departs from what you're saying, which is kind of a backhanded insult to the American public, really. You're basically saying, look, there's not enough time in the 24-hour news cycle for zingers and information. I'm saying there should be both because this is the highest office.
There should be.
There should be both, and there's got to be a way to do both. And you're saying, it sounds like you're saying
I think that
there
the
isn't.
media grabs things to play.
I think there are politicians out there who could do both and can do both skillfully and artfully, even if what they're parroting is BS. I think Gavin Newsom is a good example of that.
Yeah.
He can parrot a lot of BS, and he can do it artfully.
Yeah.
Right? He makes it an art form. Barack Obama is that same way. I think he's vapid, and I think he's intellectually dishonest, but he does have an ability to say something that's complete hogwash and have you fall in love with it.
Yeah, but Newsom is better than Obama. He's a better speaker. He's got more
Could very well be.
charisma.
The point is, there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it.
For example, like Ted Cruz, when he speaks in regards to information, Ted Cruz is amazing. You don't hear anything about him.
Big fan of Ted Cruz, and I think he's incredibly bright man. I can only listen to him for so long because he does the so many times, and I can't deal with it. But I think he's very good informationally. I think Newsom's better than Cruz.
Oh yeah.
You listen to Newsom, you don't like Newsom at all politically, but you can stomach it, right? Yeah. I mean, you almost enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that Trump and Newsom, I think Newsom would decimate Trump in my view. Now, stepping back to the 25th Amendment, sorry there.
Let me go back.
I think it's a lot.
If they put Newsom, I think Trump will use information.
Well, he
doesn't have a choice, brother.
Exactly.
He doesn't have a choice. I think there's no question about it. We got to get back to this 25th Amendment. I think it's a lot easier than people are suggesting, because the way that works, and when you're talking about the 25th Amendment, is specifically Section 4. The 25th Amendment is largely crafted for the president to take initiatives to take himself out of the mix, because he's going to be in other words, it's usually foreseen.
Surgery.
There is a section where it's not foreseen. But let's step back here for a moment. The president basically has to be able to say that he is unable to perform the duties of the office. Now, if he's incapacitated, the vice president and the cabinet come together and they can vote, but it's temporary. If the president, and that presumes, Nico, that the president can't say, "Now hold up, I am able to conduct the duties of my office." Biden would never step down. If Kamala and the cabinet tried to do that, Biden would push back. Can't we tell? I mean, Jill Biden alone would resist that. It wouldn't happen. So the 25th Amendment, specifically as it pertains to Section 4, it just wouldn't apply to Biden because he wouldn't let it apply to Biden. So let's assume, though, that it did. I think politically it would be harmful to Trump. And I don't think so. In one way, it's not going to help because Biden's not going to step down, because he's going to say, "I'm of sound mind and I don't want to do it." They can argue all they want, but Biden as the president still has the power and can say, "What are you talking about? I can think clearly and I disagree with you." And he can at least do that. I don't care how many times he coughs. And so that's a problem. And then politically, Nico, if they do succeed, if he did step down, who the hell would be the replacement? I think anybody better than Biden could give Trump a run for his money.
Why isn't anybody mentioning Kamala Harris? I mean, I know the answer, but...
Well, yeah, but she's... I mean, look, I understand. I didn't see it. I need to go back and watch it. That she did an Anderson Cooper interview after night. She's probably the best interview she's done ever.
Oh,
but that
I
you don't
didn't
say
know that.
now is she ready for presidency because she had one good interview? I mean, no, of course not. So I don't know. She's next up under the 25th Amendment hierarchy. She'd be the next up if something happens to the president. The vice president steps in.
Where's she going to go?
Well,
is she going to wander away into the night?
It's a serious dilemma the Democrat Party has right now. It's a serious dilemma. And I really think that the reason why Biden is there is because the thinking was that all these legal cases were going to take Trump out.
Yeah.
I mean, if not literally take him out legally, I mean, just throwing the towel and say, I can't take this anymore. The pressure can. I mean, you have, Fannie, whatever Willis, the DA in Georgia, she loses her crap just because someone files a motion that says things that accuse her of stuff, and she storms into a hearing and acts like a fool and unprofessional and makes an ass out of herself. And then anybody else with this type of pressure would have completely folded. I mean, anybody, literally. And so I think they thought that was going to happen because even Trump himself probably didn't know how he would react in this situation because he had never been under this type of pressure. And so I think that was it. I mean, that's my speculation because there's not a plan now. It's like, oh, crap, what do we do? Trump didn't take him out. Matter of fact, he's actually growing in popularity, and he's raising more money than he ever raised. I mean, it's insane the amount of money he raised. I don't know what he raised after the debate, even though it wasn't a perfect debate. It was a terrible performance. That just drives me insane. How do you think anybody can sell that crap? They did the most perfect debate, the best debate ever.
It's working for him.
How? It irritates me. I'm still voting for him. But
Exactly. It's working.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the 10% of undecided voters, I don't know how saying it's the most perfect debate ever is going to do it, but okay, fair enough. But I do think it's important to pop that bubble. Biden's not going anywhere. The 25th Amendment doesn't provide for it. This idea that they're going to invoke the 25th Amendment and he's going to go away into the pit of despair forever. It's never going to happen. It doesn't get rid of the power. It only transfers it temporarily. That's what we need to remember. It transfers it temporarily.
Oh, really?
And that's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. I went to nationalaffairs.com. I wanted to make sure I want to call myself out and I wasn't pulling this out of my rear. Nationalaffairs.com has this clip and it summarizes 3 points. And here's the points. First, the someone who invokes Section 4 of the 25th Amendment must be the vice president in the cabinet. Check. 2, Section 4 never removes the president from office, let alone permanently. It transfers power tentatively to the vice president as acting president. And third, and most important, the president can move to retake his powers at any time. And the procedures stack the deck heavily in favor of his return. Jill Biden, who was the president by default, is not going to let that happen. So time to just discard any notion of the 25th Amendment and move into Realityville. And it's good for Trump politically. Bad for the Democrats, but good for Trump. Having said that, Nico, a second debate?
Oh, I was just going to ask about that. Is that going to happen?
I don't know. I didn't think the first one was going to happen. So, I mean,
True that.
So
I didn't think so either.
If it's not the 25th Amendment, you're thinking that they're going to pass him through Dallas through a grassy knoll, something like that? What would happen then if they take him to Dallas?
Yeah, we are.
Well, if something happens, if you're asking a serious question, if something happens to the president, and presidents have passed away before, the vice president is sworn in as president.
Of course, of course. And her approval ratings are even worse, and that's not going to be pretty. And she's not going anywhere either. I don't care how much money they give her. So I think the Democrats are in a pickle, but it is a pickle of their own making.
Like they put a pinch hitter, and the pinch hitter doesn't want to get off the field. Now,
there's people who are listening right now. I suspect the people who are following us on Sidebar right now, Nico, are saying, well, it doesn't matter anyway, because getting back to the useful idiot theory, they want a Biden. They want a guy that they can control. I agree with that, but I never dreamed that they dreamed that this guy would be so bad that they'd be basically dragging a cadaver across the finish line. What did you call it? Weekend at Bernie's. This is the Weekend at Bernie's theory.
I mean, it's unfortunate.
I don't think they thought it was going to be that bad, that they were basically have to inject him with uppers, amphetamines or dextroamphetamines.
But when I saw some
Ritalin.
commentary, I saw people like doing a victory lap. And this is one round in a fight. I just don't get all worked up over stuff. Maybe I've learned not to. I mean, look, 4 months ago, 4 months. How much time do we have left? How much time left for the debate?
2 minutes. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I mean, what is it?
For the election?
The election.
Yeah.
4 months.
4 months. Okay.
4.5 months.
4 months ago, who would have thought that the momentum would have shifted this way? A year ago, forget about it. It's like Trump. I mean, they were like everybody but Trump. That's what people were saying. But now look what happens. A lot can happen in 4 months. So you can say, hey, that was the performance that Trump needed from Biden, not from him. Although it was, look, we got to give credit where credit is due. I'm telling you, the first half of that debate, Trump was disciplined. He didn't get pulled into stuff. He took a couple of shots. I didn't like when he started lowering his head and when he started looking. I'm read body language. Jurors look at your body language, and we talk about that. We study that. You have to. And so I didn't like the second half of the debate because then it got into, like I said, the name calling, the golf, and all the other crap. But the first half he did well. He was disciplined, but then his stamina wasn't built up. I guess his discipline lay down. But a lot of things can happen. This is not a. I'm not
so sure it was discipline though, Nico. I have
for Trump.
Yes, in a little bit of I guess thinking. I kept on thinking the format of the debate had something to do with his discipline because he really couldn't speak out. He couldn't talk over or make comments.
There is a valid point what Karen's saying, isn't it? In the sense that this was designed in a sense to help Biden, but in the end it helped Trump because it prevented him from just kind of even going off in some other rabbit trail again.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about him not being able to talk over Biden, which wouldn't have been hard. I'm talking about in his demeanor, in his presentation. I mean, you saw a different demeanor first half
and
debate.
We have been seeing a different demeanor.
That's what I'm talking about. Because then the second half kind of went back to what we expected Trump to be, but he didn't do it the whole debate, which was good. I think that served him well, and I wish he would have done it the whole debate. I think it would have even made it a better debate for him.
Okay, we're going to take a break. We only have one more segment on the radio, but please join us after the show. You can find a platform at sidebartv.com. We'll be right back with more of Sidebar. WOAI, this is Sidebar. We only have one segment. We've got to get to the Supreme Court ruling. I was thinking to myself, okay, a bad performance by Biden in a debate, and then on top of that, an adverse Supreme Court ruling. The Democrats might be feeling a little despair right now, would you say? Can you talk about the Supreme Court ruling?
Well, I wasn't going to mention the January 6th ruling right now, but I was going to get into the censorship. It's I thought, an amazing ruling, an unfortunate ruling. And I think there are certain opinions, in this case, a dissenting opinion, Nico, by Alito, that the average American could read and their IQ could probably jump a few points. And this is one of those opinions. Alito's opinion should be read by everybody. I don't care if you're in law school or not. It's beautifully worded. The man doesn't just know the law, but the way he articulates the implications of a ruling to the American public, or in this case, to free speech rights. It's beautifully done. It's artfully done, and he just absolutely dismantled. It was a 6-3 ruling. Barrett wrote the majority opinion, and she said that the plaintiffs, and by the way, just very quickly, the court's opinion, which was written by Barrett, and she and Roberts and Kavanaugh sided with the liberal side of the court. So it was a 6-3 ruling. Her ruling basically rejects the lower court's injunction against any government agencies to stop leaning on social media platforms to basically restrict any content that the government doesn't agree with. And so we thought this was going to be a no-brainer, that it was going to be a real winner. But this was a surprise. It was a surprise ruling in the sense that she said that there's no standing. The whole thing rests on no standing. And so Alito said, are you kidding me? Literally a week ago, and people can look this up because it's fresh, the National Rifle Association versus Vulo. It was a case just a week before, Nico. It's almost exactly the same, involving the New York officials that violated the NRA's First Amendment rights. And the court sided with the NRA and said that New York City, certain officials in New York State, basically were coercing private actors to restrict the NRA's ability to promote its gun promoting activities. Wait a minute. Just a week ago, a case just like this. The actors were less sophisticated. They were more, what do you call it? Ham-handed. It's an expression that people don't use today. Ham-handed or ham-fisted, which means clumsy. In New York, the people who were basically trying to restrict free speech, in this case, the NRA's free speech, they were much more ham-handed. They were much more clumsy. The only difference here is that the feds were more sophisticated. And so basically what you're saying is that if you're sophisticated, you'll get away with murder. But if you're clumsy, you won't. And Alito said this has significant implications. You are not only engaging in the omission of facts. I mean, he was brutal in the omission of facts, but you are also incredibly contradictory.
We got to start.
And this doesn't bode well for the country.
Yeah, we've got to start from the beginning in the sense of, okay, what does standing even mean? I mean, do you have a right to complain about a harm that has been done to you? The example that we use a lot and lawyers use a lot is a car accident. People can understand that. Karen gets in a car accident. She claims it's Salo's fault. I don't have standing to sue on your behalf. Now, if George is driving with you, you and George have standing because you guys have some particularized harm against Salo. Now, whether you collect against him or not, that's a different topic. So with this case, I'm not saying I agree with this decision, is saying that the state doesn't have a particularized harm. The people that were actually censored, they would be the people with the right standing. So they're the ones. The state wasn't driving in the car, essentially, is why they're saying. Now it's really kind of a BS way to get out of a decision. Now, what the court didn't say, which I guess is the only, if there is a silver lining, what the court didn't say is that the federal government can do this. They didn't give them permission. They're saying, hey, we're not going to correct you now, which is kind of giving them permission to continue to do it until they're corrected. But they didn't say, yes, the federal government has every right to have a liaison to make sure that there's no misinformation from people that put out misinformation. So, I mean, if there is a silver lining, that's the silver lining, but it's a standing issue. It wasn't a statutory interpretation. It wasn't a constitutional evaluation. It was a standing issue. And like Patrick and other lawyers believe that a standing punt is kind of a chicken. I won't say the last part of that.
I think Alito shredded that and said that if you look at the fact pattern and if you look at the evidence,
I'm just telling you what the
no, you're right.
Yeah.
And Alito responded to that and said, look, if you look at the fact pattern from the White House, and he actually named specific operatives. And he says, if you look at the emails, that the emails were phrased virtually as orders to the social media platforms. And that the frequent follow-ups ensured that they could only be understood as orders. And so that there's really no gap between the government and the regulatory agencies. I think it was CISA and the FBI and Department of Homeland Security. There's really no daylight between the nature of these orders in these emails, coercion, and social media and the social media platforms' decisions to censor content that the White House didn't find favorable. And by the way, it was specifically content related, I know, COVID and election integrity. And so that was his point. And he said this was deliberate. It was in your face. They were phrased in such a way that it was clearly an or else. He says this is blatant. And so he tried to highlight contradictions between the court. And so Nico said something, you brought up fear. Because when I first brought up the ruling in a text, you said fear is and I can't say the word here. You implied that there's something more than a strict reading of the law at play here. Is the court afraid?
Well, I mean, look, these are human beings. Kavanaugh was, he was actually stalked, and there was someone that wanted to do harm to him. Alito, they've had protests outside their homes. There's actually laws to protect against that, and they're not being enforced. I don't think Justice Sotomayor or Jackson should be treated horribly. If you disagree with them, I do not believe that they should be. And I'm a free speech guy, but where does free speech fall into intimidation, right, and threats? That's, I'm a free speech guy, but I can't say, hey, I'm going to effing kill you if you don't do this. Well, that's coercion, that's intimidation, that's all kinds of stuff. So, but if you're a free speech ass loose, I can say what I want, and you can either stop me from doing it or not. So, well, then now we have anarchy, because now it's survival of the fittest, and the only way to stop you is to break your effing jaw, and let's go. You understand my point? So we have to have some parameters. And I believe that the importance of the court, this is my personal opinion, I believe the importance of the Supreme Court is so important that there cannot be any outside influence. To me, intimidation of that nature is no different than me paying someone off to rule in my favor, and it's terrible.
It's very, and that's the crux. Alito said that the court's saying certain types of intimidation are okay, and certain types of intimidation are not okay, and that's what he's basically saying. That the type of intimidation. Really sort of the conduct of intimidation employed here by the government was sophisticated. It was third party. The government basically found a way, not maybe through direct intimidation, but through third party services and through a sophisticated network of agencies, and the fact pattern of which was disclosed in his argument. The government found a way to basically do a workaround. It's a sophisticated way to intimidate. And basically he's saying the court basically found that that's okay. If the government had been more clumsy, that's not okay. But because the government was more sophisticated, that's okay. Where does that leave us as a country? And I think that's a legit question.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was a good ruling. It's unfortunate, but the silver lining is they did not rule that the federal government can engage in this behavior. They just said that the state, although it's ironic because states always sue on behalf of their constituents.
Well, let me push back a little bit. Did they say that the government couldn't do that? Or did they say that the government couldn't do it? Or they said the government could do it while making it sound like they said the government couldn't do it. Because by I
don't know who's on first, who's on second, who's on. I don't. That sounded a little interesting. But all I'm saying is it's a standing case. So what they're saying is, state, you're not in the car. You're not in. I'm just trying to break it down to simplicity. You're not in the car, so you don't have a right to sue Salo because you weren't in the car. You weren't harmed from it. And the state's saying, wait a minute, we're representing our constituents. We sue on behalf of our constituents all the time. I think it was a crappy decision. I'm just saying that's the position they're making.
Well, I don't know the difference. I guess I know the difference materially. I know what the difference of the words means. But in terms, if you look at the implications, there's no difference.
Well, implications are different. They didn't make a determination on the constitutionality of it or the statutory construction of it. They made a determination on standing. You're not in the car. You're not harmed. State. So it should have been the person who was actually harmed to bring that would have been an analysis on the constitutionality of it.
Whether the government directly influenced a social media platform to hinder speech that they didn't like, or whether the government did it indirectly, at the end of the day, speech was hindered. So the government did do.
Okay.
So she basically said that it matters, that there's a difference between the two.
So at the end of the day, Karen was injured in the car accident. So do you just go after everybody because Karen was injured? Can you sue me?
Oh, I don't go after everybody.
Can you sue me?
No, but
that's what they're saying.
Were you involved? The government was clearly involved.
You're making my point. That's my point. They're saying that the state didn't have a right to sue. Not that someone else didn't have a right to sue. The state. They're saying the state wasn't harmed. I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying the state didn't have standing. The state was not in the car. Karen was injured. Got it. Okay, check. I get it. Somebody's speech was infringed on. But you don't have a right to complain about it. That's what they're essentially saying. I get it.
Okay, so what kind of plaintiff would you envision?
Who was harmed? Who was harmed in this scenario?
The American public was harmed.
Well, then someone from the American public should have done it, not the state itself. And that's what they're saying. I'm not saying that it's right. That's what they're saying.
Okay, so you're saying a state, even though the American people live in states and have duly elected representatives, that state can't take up their cause. So if there's enough people inside a state that they can show harm for, and this is, I think, the big crux of the argument, Alito cites specific examples of harm in states. And obviously states are a collection of people and citizens. So I think there's a part and parceling here to avoid dealing with a critical issue. And I think that's basically Alito's argument, is that the court punted on a technicality. And I don't think
I agree.
I think that's the question. Is it a legit technicality? I don't know the answer to that question. I would argue not.
Well, it's a legal legit technicality, but it's a chicken one. You know, it.
They didn't want to deal with that.
Chicken it. It's chicken it.
So what's
That's a new word for the radio portion.
what's that?
You like that? You didn't have to bleep me out there, did you, Kurt?
Yeah, 3 minutes later, the
in
story
about 4
will
minutes,
be
you're going to hear what I really meant to say.
That delay didn't work.
Yeah. All right.
And I think that's the danger. The court's playing games. It's playing games with the First Amendment. And I think this government has shown that they won't hesitate to escalate their efforts to hinder speech. And it's. I mean, I don't mean any dig here, but it's really not a laughing matter at the court level in terms of the implications for the country. It's not. And this is really worrisome. So I think you can expect now, as we get into an election season, in the heart of the election season, you can expect more of that crap, not less. This is an invitation to do more of it, not less.
Vote, vote, vote. What are you going to do? I mean, this is advocate.
You don't like your government?
Advocate.
Vote 'em out.
Encourage, educate yourself, encourage people, be able to have discussions, debate people respectfully, try to persuade others. That's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to be right. I don't want to pat on the back. I want to persuade people to think differently so they can ultimately live differently, of course, and then vote differently, because the direction of our country, I think, is very challenging. And I don't think it's sustainable ultimately. Look, we got about 30 minutes for the after show. Please join us on sidebartv.com or on Facebook or whatever
Your
else.
favorite platform.
We'll be there in about a minute. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
The preceding show was paid for.
And we're back.
Okay, so you're talking about the Supreme Court, but I didn't read what happened with J6. Can you at least give me a little background about what that is?
Well, there's a guy by the name of Joseph Fisher, and he was one of the guys that showed up at Stop the Steal rally on January 6th. And he's among, what's the number now, Nico? It's got to be, I know I keep saying hundreds, but last number I heard was like 350 people that had been charged in connection with what happened at the Capitol. And and so a lot of those people, and this came up a little bit on the debate, and I think this is where Trump, I think, left some things on the table. But there's a lot of these people have been charged, and they've been sitting around waiting for trial, which is obviously a serious problem as it pertains to due process. But there have been specific charges that have been brought forward, and Joseph Fisher is one of the guys that charged, and he or charged back, and he says that he's been unacceptably charged as it pertains to 18 USC 1512, which is a ruling or a law that came out in the aftermath of the Enron scandal that said you couldn't tamper with evidence in order to unduly influence or disrupt or
Impede.
some sort of official
Impede.
proceeding to impede. That's exactly right. That's the word. And so he's saying that they've used that to go after him when they charged him with disrupting, what's the word they use? Just employing disorderly or disruptive conduct within the Capitol, and thereby disrupting an orderly meeting. And that's the charge that they use. And he's saying, no, that doesn't even apply here, because that applies very restrictively to tampering with evidence, and it has nothing to do with his case. And so he lost it in the lower courts. The lower courts, it was a 2-1 ruling against him. His legal team pushed back. The higher court took it. The Supreme Court took it, and they found in his favor. And they basically said that the government is employing kind of a sweeping, broad interpretation of that statute to go after this plaintiff. And I thought about what Nico had said a few months ago, that a good lawyer, doesn't just look at the charge, but looks at how the government gets there. Yeah, and I think that's the crux of what happened here. Roberts, who wrote for the majority, basically said the way the government is getting at this man is unacceptable. And even Ketanji Brown Jackson, I liked what she had to write about it. She basically said, look, the legislative history of this statute is rather narrow. It's intended for a narrow reading. It deals specifically with evidence tampering in order to disrupt a proceeding. Because there are plenty of other statutes that deal with how you disrupt a proceeding, because actually disrupting a proceeding peacefully is constitutionally protected. So this is specifically dealt with evidence tampering. He's saying, I didn't tamper with evidence. I wasn't even in the Capitol for more than 4 minutes. And by the way, I was swept up, with the crowd. That's a whole
what
other...
was the split on the ruling?
It was 6-3.
Wow.
Yeah. And Ketanji Brown Jackson, and again...
The majority?
And guess who the minority was? It was Kagan and Sotomayor and Barrett. Barrett's doing some really weird things. We got to save 20 minutes just for Barrett. But this was an odd mix of people. It was Roberts. It was the conservatives, really, other than Barrett. It was all the conservatives, basically,
and
plus
Jackson,
minus Barrett, plus Ketanji Brown Jackson. I was trying to find her piece and what.
Well, while you're looking for that, this is the example,
I want to
Karen.
quote what she said. I liked it. Go ahead.
Good. I mean, I love to see stuff like that. I do. And if Barrett really is on that side, it's okay. I mean, but it's got to be logically consistent with your worldview and what your position is on constructing. And
especially her, because she's so by the law.
What's her? But this is an example of statutory interpretation. See, the one before we talked about, when we're talking about the free speech one, that was an issue of standing. They didn't get into the statutory interpretation. They didn't get into a constitutional analysis. This is my point. They're saying this statute was not written and wasn't intended to be used. When you look at legislative intent, this wasn't the intent. Now you're really stretching, and which is some of the arguments they were making in the Braggs situation with Trump.
So we're seeing Roberts and Ketanji embracing an agreement here, which is bizarre. He wrote it would be odd for Congress to hide a catch-all provision, as the government described it, in the middle of Section 1512. And she came back and she said, yeah, that's right. She basically said that, hey, I disapprove with the conduct that Fisher is alleged to have engaged in. But this is not the immorality of those acts, she said. She said this is about the scope of the particular crime. And she went on and talked about the legislative record, and she underscored that Congress was specifically interested in the destruction or fabrication of evidence, and that nothing suggested that they wanted, quote, a sweeping all-purpose obstruction statute. And the reason why this has significant implications is because people have been sitting in jail, hundreds of them, and this is seen as the foundational charge for obstruction. And this is going to affect 2 of Trump's
That's what I wanted to know about.
In the Washington, D.C. case. So this is ultimately, Nico, where this goes, because it's a tangled web here. But it's inarguably connected. And so I think foundationally you can hear it just as a seismic shift here that I think will bode well in Trump's favor. But let's see. Who knows?
But some say that, I don't know who. I was just listening to something that said this J6 Supreme Court ruling has nothing to do with the charges that Trump's facing?
Well, which ones? I mean,
I
you got
don't
a bunch of them all over
know.
the place. You got
I know,
Georgia,
but they're
you got
saying,
New York.
oh,
Well,
it's
not all of them,
got
but there
January
are
6th.
some. There are some. The
Yeah.
Washington D.C. case. I mean, there's two of them specifically that deal with obstruction of justice there at the Capitol, and they cite this particular statute. So I don't. You can't separate the
It's
two.
unavoidable. It's going to affect some of
Yeah.
the cases. I mean, good. I mean, that's going to benefit
Yeah.
Trump.
Yeah.
It's going to benefit Trump, and good for Justice Jackson to take a stand. Look, I like genuine personalities to give your honest thoughts, but then be able to back them up. I'm entitled to be wrong. You're entitled to be wrong. All the justices are entitled to be wrong, but they're not entitled to do something, in my opinion, that they don't genuinely believe because they're scared or intimidated. You shouldn't have signed up for that job. And I think that's the point that George was asking me earlier. That how does it not go into play? I mean, you have judges in this day and age. People attack judges. They go to their houses. I think all judges should be protected. Jurors should be protected. Prosecutors, as much as some of them irritate me, they should be protected. They should be protected. Now, there should be a mechanism to rectify an abuse of their discretion or their authority or their power, or if they're doing things illegal or immoral or unethical. Not immoral, that's a different issue. Unethical or illegal, that's different. There needs to be redress from that, but they need to be protected. We cannot have a system where it's an intimidation game of, well, who can, threaten enough and talk enough shit to somebody to where they eventually subside and do what they want, acquiescence to what you want to do. We can't have that. I'm telling you, that is not the way to, and that's why I love to see when people that disagree agree based off a set of ideas, but you need to be able to express that.
Yeah.
Well, they have to express. And so if this is what she really believes, then so be it. I have no evidence that she's being intimidated, but look, it's intimidating. These people are going to houses and protesting outside your home, and then you got that thing with Kavanaugh was real. Yeah. So that's unfortunate. The statutes need to be, look, if you intimidate a judge, if you intimidate a prosecutor, if you have a terrorist, you need to be prosecuted and harshly. You do. I firmly believe that. Now, if you're just disagreeing, not everything is intimidation. You have a right to express your disagreement. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking about true threats and terroristic threats or threats on your life or your safety, your family's safety. I'm not talking about telling someone I think you suck and this is terrible. You should have a right to do that.
To answer the question that was left on the table here a couple of minutes ago that Karen asked, Seth Lucas wrote a piece for Heritage on this issue, specifically as it pertains to Trump, and this was his conclusion. Significantly, Fisher's win Friday at the Supreme Court will likely impact Smith's D.C. prosecution of Trump. Smith charged Trump with obstructing the electoral vote certification in violation of Section 1512, the very same section, as well as engaging in a conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding in violation of Section 1512. Smith will now have to show that Trump impaired, attempted to impair, or conspired with others to impair the availability or integrity of documentary or testimonial evidence used in official proceeding. Good luck with that. So at least 2 of the 4 are in question now. So that's the implications nationally anyway. It's a big deal.
I'm almost embarrassed to ask this question because
That's never stopped you before.
You do it so well.
We know that Trump hasn't been charged with the J6 insurrection, So what are these people being held on for almost a year? The ones that are in jail right now? What is the charge?
Well, that's
Well,
why
Trump is not their standard bearer. Just because Trump hasn't been charged doesn't mean that there's people. And that's where I think Trump gets uncomfortable about this answer. Look, let's analyze it. There's no evidence, and that should have been one of his answers if he would have prepared for this portion of it. You say, Can someone, Jake, do me a favor, while on break, will somebody Google and see if I've been charged with that? I've been charged with everything else.
Right.
Why? Do you think anybody's doing me any favors? Because I wasn't involved in that, and nor did I want that. That wasn't my intent. The transcripts are clear. If you want to play gymnastics with the transcripts, it shows your lack of character and your dishonesty, and shame on you, and the American people can see it. Look at the American people, look this up yourself. That's it. But now there's people that broke the law that day.
True.
Don't get me wrong. So
True.
I don't know.
And there are other charges.
So I don't know what their specific charges are. I haven't looked at all the indictments.
I mean, he was charged with assaulting a police officer.
He can't take the position. He can't take the position that everyone in January 6th or even come across didn't do anything wrong. Nobody should take
But
that
why
position.
are they still sitting there? Like, what? If,
Well, they can file speedy trial motions. I don't know. I'm not looking at their procedural posture or what's been filed or what the discovery orders have done and what the the
they
scheduling
weren't
order
allowed,
from the judge.
bail or I don't get it.
There's a very few. Well, look, yeah, bail is different in federal system than in state system.
Okay.
You don't post bond.
Oh.
You have a bail hearing. You have an initial appearance, then you have a bail hearing, and then they look at ability, whether you're going to threat to the society or to the community, and whether you're going to show up to court. And they look at the nature of the accusation and all that thing. There's different factors a magistrate will look at.
So
And
they
that's
can
it.
sit in there until they're ready.
Most people do on federal charges. Most people.
For how long?
Until you go to trial or you plead the case.
Okay, it's been 3 years. A lot of minutes. Right?
Then, I don't know. Again, we're playing
No, but I'm
money
just
on the quarterback. I
how
have to
long
talk
can
to the
they sit
defense.
in your view? How long is that? Does that sound okay to you, or are you concerned about that, or does that sound normal?
Is that long?
Depends.
Oh.
It's a crappy answer, but it depends. There's cases that are pending for 4 years in state court. 5 years. I have a client in Atascosa County right now that's been there 4.5 years. He's got a bunch of charges. That's going to take time. Now, if you work out a plea deal where they get sentenced, then you get time for credit for being there.
So here's the dilemma, though. There are many cases, not all, but there are many cases of individuals who were sitting there. And Tom Cotton made this point, I don't know when, it was months ago, because this has been going on and on and on. And I don't think there's a satisfactory conclusion to it. That's why we're still talking about it. Where a lot of them, where their pretrial detention exceeded their sentence. Mm-hmm. So the list is getting longer and longer and longer and longer. And I'm just saying, in our system of justice, why is that okay? It seems...
No one's saying it's okay.
I'm asking rhetorically.
Yeah, but you got to bitch about it for something to happen. Do you know whether their defense lawyers have filed speedy trial
There's
motions?
been a lot of bitching. I don't know that.
Okay, well, that's an important factor. I want to know why.
I can't imagine. That almost seems obvious.
Trump says as soon as he's in, he's letting them, letting them all go or whatever. Can he even do that as a president? Say, okay, all of these J6 guys.
Trump said that he would look at some, and this is typical of Trump. He would look at things on a case by case basis and make that assessment. He never said he would let them all go. He said that he would look at some of those because he feels that some of them are not just. And again, just in the example that I gave, and Cotton is the one that championed this, I think, the most in the Senate. And that's a statement that he made. He goes, I know of many of them where their pretrial incarcerations or pretrial detentions, whatever the word is, exceeded the length of their sentence.
Yeah.
That's not right. And Nico, I'm just wondering, obviously I'm not a lawyer, you are, but I can't imagine that a lawyer wouldn't make that recommendation to their defendants.
I have no idea why. I don't know the answer to that. But that's a question I would have: is did they file a speedy trial motion? If they didn't, why? What is the issue? What are they really facing? Are there charges they're facing? Were there other things we don't know? If they say if you contest this, then we're going to file these charges, and that's all part of your negotiations. Whether new charges or more charges are filed, and whether you're doing damage control, and whether this case is stronger than this case, we have to weigh it all. I don't know what the dynamics are, or if you go forward, then we're going to file against these family members, and because they're kind of collaterally involved. There's just a lot of factors.
But filing for a speedy trial motion, that can be rejected by the government, of course.
The government has no say-so. The judge would have a say-so on that. You file a speedy trial motion.
The government can resist that in court. And can
yeah, they're going to contest it.
They're going to contest it in court.
And then there's factors the judge has to consider. But it's ultimately the judge overlooking.
And they've used this time. They've used this time to kind of, well, now according to the United States Supreme Court, they've used the time to basically stretch the original intended meaning of the statute beyond what it should. I'm just wondering how you make this right at this point. It doesn't necessarily mean all of them will go free, but I think it means that if they're being held on that statute.
Well, look, here's what a defense lawyer should do. Okay, so you temper your statements, but depending on what you know about the case initially, you do your discovery. You look at what the government is charging your client with. You look at the evidence that they have to support it. You evaluate the statute. You see if the statute fits the evidence. You talk to your client about any potential defenses. You investigate any witnesses or any collateral evidence that would go to establish innocence and to refute the burden of proof that the government would have in a trial. And then you weigh it all out. If somebody, look, I have clients that have been to prison twice or more before, and then they're charged with another felony, so they would be what we call habitualized. They're habitual. That means they take whatever felony charge they're facing, and it makes it 25 to life. It's equivalent to California's 3 strikes and you're out. So if somebody has been habitualized and they're facing 25 to life, and the government brings a weak case against them, super weak, and I've had clients have to make these decisions before, but it's still coming, and they're facing 25. If they lose, if a jury comes back with a verdict of guilty, the minimum a jury can give you is 25. But if you have a record like that you're habitual, you're not getting 25, most likely. And then the government comes in and says, we'll offer you 5 years.
Oh,
but there's strong evidence of innocence. What do you do? And then you've been in custody for 3. You're going to parole out if it's not a 3G offense. I mean, there's a lot of factors. I'm just giving you an example.
Go
I have
home
no
with
idea.
25 years.
All I'm saying is everybody's situation is individual, and there's a lot of factors that a defense lawyer and that the actual person accused have to consider. That's all. I have no idea what these people are doing. But yes, 3 years is a long time on some cases. Some cases not. Complex white-collar case, no. Murder case, not always. I mean, it depends how big the case
Throwing
is and how
a
much
rock
evidence.
into the window of the Capitol buildings.
The obstruction of the obstruction of an official proceeding, that's a misdemeanor.
Oh, then that's different.
And these are misdemeanors. So you have 350 people, all of them under this particular statute. I'm not saying there aren't other crimes like assaulting police officers or destruction of property to the extent they did that. But on this particular statute, it would be considered a misdemeanor.
I would have to verify that because that doesn't make sense to me.
What does?
Well, that you're in a
obstructing an official proceeding.
No. If there's a federal misdemeanor, 3 years if you're in custody waiting to be resolved, you might as well get judgment sat unless there's a principle. Unless I didn't do it, I'm not pleading. I don't care if I'm here 5 years. Yeah, but you already satisfied the max. You've served it out 3 times over. Doesn't matter. Could that be a possibility? Of course it could be a possibility. All I know is when I was district attorney, there were so many people out there, a group of people saying, people are rotting in our county jails for possession of marijuana charges. They want bail reform. No, they're not. There's nobody rotting away in the Bexar County jail. 100% accurate, I'm telling you. Not 99. There's nobody rotting away, even back when I was DA. There's nobody rotting away back when I was DA in jail for just the possession of marijuana. Now, how do you take a lie and make it believable? You take a little bit of truth and you expound on it. So could there have been someone in jail with a possession of marijuana charge? Yes. With also a felony charge and a parole violation that had a blue warrant? Absolutely. They're rotting in jail for the possession of marijuana. No, they're not. They're in county jail because there's a blue warrant on a revocation, and there's a felony which could be enhanced as a repeater. That's a completely But they were saying, but someone's in there. Well, that's not accurate. It's true, but not accurate. So I mean, I don't know if that applies here, George. I have no idea. All I'm saying is I need more before I come to a conclusion. That's all.
There you have it. So there's plenty of.
There's that.
Joseph Fisher has a number of other. It was a 7-count deal. This is the count that ultimately he believes will unravel the whole thing. But there are other counts. We'll see. I don't know how foundational this is. Certainly, it affects Trump.
September 10th. That's the date of the next debate. You think he's going to Camp David now?
But that's the point that we didn't bring up during the radio show, Karen. He was at Camp David for a week.
Now it's going to be 2 weeks.
For a week.
2 months.
And that's the best he could do.
That's bad.
That's the best he could do after a week. And I think that's probably why his
voice
was
George,
so
you were
raspy.
right. That was their position for a day. He had a cold. And then the next day he's campaigning. He's like, I don't debate the way I go. You didn't sound like you have a cold now. I mean, what happened? You got over it that quick. I mean, I don't know what you took.
This campaign is so ripe for conspiracy theory. Right?
Really
it's so ripe. Like, there's a lot of them flow. Like, for right now, I'm thinking, okay, they took him off for a week because they're trying to test different drugs. Okay, let's try this drug on Monday. Okay.
Implant a cochlear bug. I heard that one.
Body just to
it
see
looked
how
like
works.
he was listening to something, right?
He did a couple of times.
It was
his
weird.
Ear.
I mean, he would go.
And there's a point. He had something in his
I mean, it was bad. And I'm not trying to make fun of him.
I know.
I'm analyzing it. It bothered me. I mean, if you watched it on Thursday, I mean, all I kept doing was I was just staring. I was looking, and I'm looking at Biden as I'm looking at Trump when he's answering, they're answering, and going back and forth. I'm listening to the commentators or to the moderators, and I'm observing everything the way juries do. I was trying to function as a juror, and I was looking, and there was a lot of things that something was very off. And then even to your point, Karen, Jill Biden's, I mean, the candidate gets up there and riles up the crowd.
That was awful.
It was terrible. I mean, Biden's there going, did I do that? And I'm not being funny. That's the way it came across. Right, Mom?
But it is funny,
right, Mom?
but yeah.
But and she's like she's talking to a kid. honey, Johnny, you did everything
You
right.
answered
You answered all
every
their
question.
questions.
You ate all your vegetables.
Yes, exactly.
You ate all your vegetables.
Saulo, that's exactly
Yeah, totally.
what it was.
That's how it felt.
And then, what did Freddie do to him? He lied, and you should have won. I mean,
He's not going to
was
recess.
awful.
It was bad, man. It was really bad, and I don't.
I
and
thought
so-
it was made up at first.
Yeah,
It was
I thought it was
so
age-
bizarre. I was
yeah.
like, what? No, this cannot be.
And so then the question comes up: then why did CNN just shit pile on him? And I've heard
so
people
true.
say they had no choice. I mean, they're already not credible. Their
Nico,
ratings are already
Nico,
low as shit. What are you going to do if after
Yeah.
that?
Speaking of
performance?
conspiracy theories, I get frustrated for two things. One, who are the handlers? Because who are the 3 or 4 people that are making decisions, even over the media? For example, tomorrow they say, okay, here's the notes. Send it to all the news stations. We're going to use the word lie. We're going to use this phrase. We're going to use this terminology. There's a few of them outside the Democratic Party making those decisions. And then the other thing I'm frustrated is, isn't there a way for the citizenry or people get frustrated because of this? Like, for a whole 3 weeks, what did the other guy say? Scarborough say, oh, this is if you can't handle the truth, this is the best Biden we've ever
Oh,
had.
yeah, that
That's
was
what he said.
so
And then the next
embarrassing
day,
for
no,
him.
he should. So we should be like, you all lied to us. All of
Yeah.
Well, see, but
Media.
in his venue, no one's gonna. Scarborough is a disgrace. That guy should repent, and then he would be
complete
forgiven.
dipshit.
He's got to repent.
Guy's a
But
complete dipshit.
they all knew this shit.
Yeah.
they all knew it. I mean, so the fact that you're saying that the president of the United States has a handler should bother you. And I know what that means normally. It's like
Yeah.
someone that organizes your stuff and that does your scheduling and does all that stuff
yeah.
and gives you advice. But it literally seems applicable here that he has, and the way Jill is, and the Easter Bunny coming up and moving him out of the way, and him constantly saying, I'm not supposed to say this, I'm going to get in trouble. You're the fucking president
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
United
yeah.
States, Jack.
You should be in
Act
control.
like it.
You should be in
You're
control.
in control. You take advice. Proverbs says wisdom is found in the counsel of many. So you take advice. I had a counsel. I had division chiefs. I needed their experience. I wasn't an expert in everything. I was just a dumbass with my name on the plaque. And so the leader takes that, and their leadership is what he's supposed to have.
Whatever network existed between the White House
Shameful,
communications and media, it clearly fell apart during the debate.
Yeah.
Because you saw the New York Times, you saw Politico in real time calling it a disaster.
Yep.
Politico, I was trying to find the Twitter. Politico said, quote, Biden is toast, calling it now. Stumbles, rambles in opening of debate. I mean, he came in. I mean, that's really bad.
And check this out,
And it
Van
wasn't-
Jones.
And it was probably because of debate practice, granted, for a week. But brother, this is beyond cold and raspy voice. There's a lot more
right
serious
after
than
the
that.
debate, we were watching the CNN panelists, right? And they're all were saying, "Now it was bad, it's bad." Van Jones, I'm sorry, it was horrible. He's a friend, I love him. 10 minutes later, he says, "Well, we're getting some information that we're being bad in bashing Trump, the Biden." I'm like, who's telling him?
Well,
who's
first
telling
of all-
him, "Hey, bro, those are not the talking
but
points"?
CNN spent a good share of time, calling Trump,
A liar.
Orange Man and
Right.
and demeaning him. But it was very obvious between CNN and MSNBC. I mean, Political, New York Times, you name it. Jon Stewart said he was looking for real estate in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Right.
I don't.
That was
It was pretty
awful.
uniform. Basically saying, "Hey, man, this guy's got to be replaced at the top of the
But it's
ticket."
interesting. Right after the debate, they hadn't gotten their talking points. Now they're switching it around a little bit. I'm like, who's the one that's writing the talking points? I want to know who those are.
It's a legitimate question. I'll tell you, that's a legitimate question because it's very apparent. I mean, you've seen the collage of videos going around
Yeah.
where
Same phrase.
every
News
station
outlet.
I mean,
outlet
it's
around
got
the
to be
country
the White House, right?
is just giving. But why would a true journalistic in
because
company?
they aren't true
But you
journalists.
should-
That's
my
the
point.
only
Yes,
answer,
it's
right?
a rhetorical question. It's 100%
Yeah.
right.
This things are coming together. I think in the minds of the public. All of the gaslighting,
Yeah.
propagandizing, the Pravda-esque behavior from the White House, the Sovietization of the White House, all of those efforts to tell Americans that they're not really seeing what they're seeing, that their president really is in control of his faculties, when in fact he is in steep mental and physical decline. And so that debate sealed the deal.
Totally.
I mean, and so Americans are putting things together. I think. I think you're seeing it in the polling, and that's why that undecided, Nico, continues to shrink.
Yeah.
10, 9,
Well, they had focus
8.
groups that night, and I think there was one focus group where there was 10,
Yeah.
And 8 of them switched to Trump because
Yeah.
Biden
What?
pushed them over there. One of them was staying with Biden, and one of them was still undecided
And it's
or whatever.
not, to your point, that they just love Trump
No.
all of a sudden. It's that this is
Biden-
the leader of the free world, president of the United States. Hey, by the way, I can't afford to keep my lights on. In other words, all these seemingly disparate points are coming together into a logical choice, I think. And I think you're going to see that 10% shrink. But the Robert Hur thing, I keep coming back to that.
Well,
'cause
that was he missed that one. That was
that's a
huge.
big deal. But let's go to the Congressional Oversight Committee under James Comer, who requested the transcript from Merrick Garland's office for the Robert Hur interview, and they've stalled. They refused to release the transcript because it's so much worse than the pieces that we heard under testimony. And so you know what I'm talking about, right?
I know, but them not giving it is proof enough that it's just a disaster that continues. Not handing it over is.
It was recorded.
Yeah.
And I think if this was truly the most transparent administration ever, Americans should be able to hear the audio between that interview and Robert Hur. And
I mean, there's no
without
claim that there's an ongoing investigation because there's not anymore.
Right.
He said he's not going to investigate. He's not going to prosecute him because he couldn't withstand a trial.
Everybody
which is a
feels
weird
so
standard.
bad for him.
and they've threatened Garland. I mean, with congressional censure. And
I know we had to do a hard stop today because Salo's got to run, and there's some other things that I have to do as well. But I will tell you, this just popped up on my feed that and maybe you probably knew this, and I just forgot. This explains to me Trump's demeanor, maybe that he was the gesture of calling that 12-year-old mom,
yeah,
the
that's
mom
right.
of that 12-year-old
That funeral.
victim, 12-year-old girl was murdered, strangled to death by 2 illegal immigrants.
Yes.
And Trump called the mom. That's the kind of stuff that needs to be. That's Trump. I mean, whether you like him or not, he's got that in him, and he's been consistent. This is not a one-off, and he does
Years
stuff
before
years before he was in president. 100% Salo, and that's what kind of softened me to him because I didn't like him at first, and I wasn't supporting him when there was 84 people running in the primary the first time. He wasn't my first choice, second or third choice. But then I started studying his kids and him and people that like him, and they've liked him for a long time. And why did this person like him, and now they can't stand him? And wait a minute, you really liked him, man, and now you're calling him this. No, he wasn't a racist back then when he's taking pictures and doing this and supporting Jesse Jackson and all this other stuff. But this is the kind of stuff that Trump does. But he had that demeanor. He had the demeanor that he spoke with a mom of a murdered 12-year-old. That's the demeanor he had. And maybe it wasn't a plan. Maybe he was just in the moment saying that's how serious this debate is. That's how serious this election is.
And remember,
I don't know. That's interesting.
That's really important. I remember the point in the debate at which Biden used that.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
opened the door for Trump to walk in, and he walked in and he did it. And here's the quote that Biden said: "There's so many young women who have been, including the young woman who was just murdered." And he went out and he went to the funeral, and the idea, this is incoherent, but follow me. And he went to the funeral, and the idea that she was murdered by an immigrant, they talk about that, but here's the deal. There's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters. It's just ridiculous. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines. What's he saying? He's trying to, well, he's equating that type of thing.
Yeah.
Where women, young women, children are being raped, killed by illegal aliens, to women who are allegedly stopped from getting abortions when they try to cross state lines. How in the world these two things are comparable is disgusting. And Trump jumped on that. He didn't let that go. That's something Trump did very, very well, and he picked a good topic to do that really well in. So, Trump had some real highlights, man.
We can talk later about this because I know we got to go. But I mean, look, to Trump's credit, I've heard commentators, and I have to agree with it. It was a push on abortion. I thought he was going to get slaughtered on abortion because he never handled. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but because again, Newsom would have hurt him because and look, there's defenses to the position of being pro-life. I mean, logical ones that make sense. And when you have 2 minutes is a long enough time to make your points if you're trained and you've practiced on the point you're trying to make. But Biden was so bad. I mean, it was. I'm telling you, Biden lost that debate more than Trump won it. But
and
still,
he lost
net is Trump won.
even the most radical. That's a good point on abortion. I think he lost it because Trump forced him into a corner, and Biden said, "We are not for late-term abortion."
Yeah.
Period. That's not true. Yeah. And then Trump said, "What are you talking about? Under Roe v. Wade, that you think is just so awesome, you have late-term abortion." That's factually true.
Yeah.
I mean,
see, that's a fact that's my point. Those are the type of facts that Trump needs to have on other topics.
And he
That's all
continued.
I'm
Remember,
saying.
he nailed it. He says you can do whatever you want, depending on the state. we don't think that that's a good thing. He said, we think it's a radical thing. Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
But then Trump can't be able but you got to get elected, so I got to do this. Like, Trump, don't say that part. So that means you're just saying this because you want to be elected.
You know what he meant. You know what he meant, but that's not. That's really not.
That's the lack of skilled articulation of your point. That's all I'm saying. All right. Have a good weekend. God bless you. Thanks.